The Hurt Business by Mike Miner. We are such fragile creatures. I should know. I'm a leg breaker by trade. Muscle for Johnny Del Negro, the loan shark. It doesn't actually come to that very often, leg breaking. For most guys, the threat of pain is enough. True, some of them don't care about themselves. But most care about something, someone. Maybe not their wives, but their children. That's a pressure point for most guys. To really be good at the pain game, though, you need to have been hurt. Hurt bad. Maybe to the point of numbness. You have to be able to tap into that pain. Because there's all kinds of ways to hurt someone. It's not always about physical pain. But sometimes it is. Hands are good. So many bones. So many nerves. So much potential for damage. It's a violent way of life. No question. But violence has always been a part of my life. As a child, my favorite game was guns. That's what me and my brothers called it, guns. Might have begun as cops and robbers or cowboys and Indians, but by the time I was 7 or 8, it was just guns. On Christmas, Santa brought us a small toy arsenal. Cowboy six-shooters with holsters, machine guns, bows and arrows, swords, knives, laser guns. Not to mention the G.I. Joe and Star Wars figures who would soon join the ongoing war being waged in our basement between good and evil, where Darth Vader and Cobra Commander combined forces against Han Solo and Duke. Not uncommon to see Snake Eyes and Boba Fett squaring off in an abandoned castle made of blocks, like Chuck Norris and Bruce Lee and The Return of the Dragon. I consumed an unhealthy amount of kung fu movies in my youth. Saturday afternoons. The Saturday drive-in was a bloodbath of badly dubbed Hong Kong imports. Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, John Woo, the 5 Deadly Venoms, Wu-Tang monks, Shaolin temples. After 2 hours of this mayhem, the rest of the afternoon was spent reenacting every scene, especially the over-the-top, bloody, slow-motion deaths. Inevitably, someone got hurt. Inevitably, someone cried. Usually my youngest brother, Nick. Our father could not tolerate crying, so he sought out the one who caused the tears, me, more often than not. He favored the quick smack to the temple, a difficult blow to duck as he was like an Old West quick-draw artist with his right hand. Sometimes it was worse, depending on his mood and his sobriety. I tasted the buckle from his belt more than once. My father knew how to hurt people. He was my first, best teacher. My Saturdays begin early now. I check my ledger, start my house calls. Like an old-fashioned doctor, except instead of cures, I bring pain and suffering. How much depends on what is owed, how long they've owed. If this is my first or my 10th visit. First stop is over in Chestnut Hill, some Boston college punk. A Jesuit school, brick and stone buildings. Everything looks like an old church. Fancy schmancy. The kid's in senior housing, a 4-man apartment on Commonwealth Avenue. I do my best impression of a parent. Normally, I favor a black leather jacket. Today, I sport a black wool topcoat, my funeral coat. A jaunty pageboy cap covers my head, and a plaid scarf. About as harmless as I can make myself look. This crowd won't spot the piece tucked into the back of my pants. Sunglasses will keep the few early birds walking and jogging around campus from seeing my boxer's face, the scar tissue above my eyes. I time it so I'm going in as a group is coming out. They hold the door open for me. These polite Catholic school kids even call me sir. Not just the door to the room. BC sprung for some decent locks, I must confess. Takes me a good 5 minutes with my ace lockpick kit to get in. Early Saturday morning, so, as I hoped, this room's still asleep. A pyramid of Budweiser cans on the kitchen table. A bong next to it. The pleasant smells of both mix with the perspiration and dirty laundry. The walls are decorated with classic rock posters, Zeppelin, The Who, AC/DC. A small common room to the left. 2 closed bedroom doors in front of me. A short hallway to the right leads to the bathroom. Quiet reigns. I try both bedroom doors. One is open, one locked. I pop the locked one without a sound. Dim inside. Takes a moment before I can make out the 2 beds, 2 desks. Only one bed is occupied. Our boy snoozes in it. But he's not alone. A cute blonde number is spooning with him. She snores, ever so slightly. Adorable. I lock the door behind me, pull a chair from one of the desks to sit in, light a cigarette. Wait. The posters above his bed are all gangster movies. Goodfellas, The Godfather, Cagney, and White Heat. Maybe my man thinks he's an outlaw. I chuckle at the thought. The girl stirs. Long blonde hair, a nose dotted with freckles. Her blue eyes flutter open. And my ugly mug greets her. At first, she must think she's dreaming. A puzzled look. Then the dawning that this is all too real. She gasps, pulls the sheets over her thin, bare shoulders. Her boyfriend whispers something in his sleep. "Jimmy," she whispers, frightened. He grunts at her. "Jimmy!" "What?" She pokes him under the sheets. Her eyes never leave me, never blink. I wink at her. Jimmy raises his head, sees me. I wink at him, too. "Fuck," he says, which is a good start. I get that a lot. "Early bird gets the worm, James." Another fuck. Mind the language in front of the ladies, son. Kids today. "Who the fuck are you?" the girl says. "She's a classy one, James." "Who the fuck are you?" she repeats. I sigh. "Young lady, I need to talk to your boyfriend. Kindly shut up." I enjoy the wrinkle of her snobby button nose. I wonder if anyone has ever hurt her in her short, spoiled life. His head is under his pillow. He groans. "James," I say, "look at me." Reluctantly, he pulls his head from under his pillow. "Do you know who I am?" "Who is he?" she says. "Johnny Del Negro told me that if there was any trouble, Frankie Longlegs would pay me a visit." I grin. Ash on his carpet. The girl says, "Frankie Longlegs?" It's a mouthful. Most people just call me Legs. They have since I was a kid. Always tall for my age. Still am. Have to stoop to get into most doorways. "Who's Johnny Del Negro?" the girl asks. "My employer, Bookie Loan Shark. You see, when a gambling debt goes unpaid, it becomes a loan. The meter starts ticking. The VIG adds up." "What if they don't pay?" she says. It's the perfect cue for me to stand up. She can't help it. She gasps. "You're about to find out." "Jimmy, the meter's up to 11 grand. You got it?" To his credit, he looks me right in the eyes when he says, "No." "Any of it?" He shakes his head. I nod. "In future, when you get all that local money on a local underdog, lay off the bets to a bigger fish. It's a hard lesson." I ash again on the floor. "Next week, 12 grand, and so on. Call your father. Do what you have to do." Jimmy nods. I sigh. Now, a little something to help you remember. The delicious shock in her eyes as I grab the girl's hand and stab her forearm with the red tip of my cigarette. Jimmy doesn't move, out of shock or fear, I don't know. Neither can believe what is happening. After a slight delay, the pain snaps the girl out of it. She hollers, and I let her go. I button my coat, tip my cap, and leave. Behind me, the sound of her crying, Jimmy comforting, her slapping him and whisper shouting. In the kitchen, one of Jimmy's roommates is frozen, holding a box of frosted strawberry Pop-Tarts. Top of the morning, I say, as I exit the premises. Stop number 2 is not as fun. A bakery up the road a bit, in Newton. An observant Jewish bakery, so they're closed on the Sabbath. The back door's open like Saul said it would be. Saul, the owner, sits on a wooden stool in the cleanest kitchen I've ever seen. You could eat off the floor. Every time I enter his kitchen, the smell knocks me out. Baked bread, butter, and sugar, even on Saturdays. The air itself is a confection, a treat to breathe. I imagine this is what heaven smells like. This is as close as I'll ever get. Saul gives me a half-hearted smile. I don't want to hurt Saul. He must be close to 70. A full head of white hair crowns his head. Sad brown eyes in a thin face. He points to another stool. I sit. Coffee? Please. He creaks out of the chair, pours me a cup. Thanks. It's fantastic. So, here we are, Saul says. Here we are. There is no other way. I've been carrying Saul for a month now. He knows it. He appreciates it. His bakery can't compete with a Starbucks shop sprouting like weeds in this town. He thought he could. Thought all his place needed was a facelift. The banks didn't see it his way. So he paid a visit to Johnny Del Negro. We know where that got him. Saul savors his coffee. I do too. I'll miss this place. I'd always planned on leaving this joint to one of my sons. Maybe it's good they're not here to see this. 2 sons. One he lost in a car accident, the other to drugs. Saul knows all about the hurt business. It will look like an accident? Yes. Simple, really. A blown-out pilot light on a stove, allowing gas to fill the kitchen until one of the other lights ignites. Happens every day. Too bad it happened on a Saturday, people will say. Or else the building might have been saved. We finish our coffee in silence. Then, out of habit, he washes them in the sink, puts them on a rack to dry. I can't help but smile. He takes a last look around. How many mornings has he spent here, starting long before the sun rises? How he must have busted his ass. He pauses in the doorway, turns to me with a face used to losing things. Everybody gets in over their heads, Saul. It'll be okay. Plans never work out. His eyes are wet. I turn away before he does. I'm careful. Need this to look just right for the insurance company. Just enough grease to coax the fire to the most flammable sections of the shop. Doesn't take long. I replace the batteries and the smoke detectors with dead ones. After, I watch from across the street, chew on a cigarette. I can't help but think of my father, of his store, a little corner grocery in Brighton. I wait until I see the smoke billow in the windows before I take off. I haven't spoken to my father in a decade, give or take. He had cause not to see me. Doesn't make it right, but he had cause. I don't particularly miss him anymore. Don't miss the smacks, the punches, the spankings, the whippings. Still, I wouldn't mind seeing him, so I could rearrange his smile with my fists. I grew up big and mean, just like my dad. Juvie helped with the meanness. I was a bad kid. Now I'm a bad man. Born bad? Who knows? Who cares? What's the blame game going to do for me? Doesn't make much difference how we got here. Here we are. The last time I saw my father, my last image of him, he was driving my little brother to the hospital. Nick's forehead bashed in and bloody, courtesy of me. The aluminum bat I'd had in my hands. I don't really remember what he said or did. My temper's always been on a hair trigger. I do remember the noise. Metal on the skull. Still hear that noise from time to time. Occupational hazard. I escaped from juvie on my first day, went home. Tried to. My father's voice loud and crazy and drunk from upstairs. My mother at the kitchen door pressed cash into my fist, pushed me out the door. My other two brothers looked at me like chickens look at a wolf. Like I said, there's all kinds of ways to hurt someone. I was learning. Back to juvie. Where else could I go? They had this Golden Gloves program for kids like me. A healthy outlet for violence, they said. Hurting and getting hurt. Not sure which I enjoyed more. Because I deserved to get hurt. For putting my little brother in a coma. He's still in a coma. I see him once a week, Saturday evenings. My family knows not to come then. The first time, a social worker brought me right to the door. Told me to go in, visit. So pale. So thin. His forehead had healed, but it was like I could see cracks under the skin. The bruised brain beneath the bone. That hurt. Worse than any beating I ever got. The next time hurt just as bad. It still stings. Just like the first time, maybe worse. Watching him grow. Like some kind of ugly exotic flower in a greenhouse. His skin vampire white now. The color of everything else in that awful place. When I turned 18, a boxing manager offered to sponsor me. I was undefeated as an amateur. Had won the amateur belt the year before. I was always good at hurting people. He made me better. Could I have been a contender? Was I the next great white hope? Probably not. My trainer was a sweet guy, Al. A sweet guy in a sour world. He owned a gym in Dorchester, just off Dot Avenue. It was a shithole. Too cold in the winter, too hot in the summer. Place hadn't been painted since Christ was born. I loved it. I was like a father to us orphans and castaways, all collected from family services. There was a half-dozen of us, sometimes 10. We trained like those ninjas I used to watch on Saturday afternoons. Al was the master. We were the grasshoppers. The gym was a temple of pain. Push-ups and sit-ups and jumping rope, punching bags, punching each other, getting punched, running in the cold, in the heat. Every day a battle. I miss those days. Maybe you heard of a few of us. I would land the occasional title fight in Vegas or Atlantic City. Once or twice in Madison Square Garden. Never had anyone with a belt, but he tried to get us all a shot. He never told us about his wife getting cancer, about the medical bills. But all of a sudden we were fighting more often. Fights Al would never have taken before. Guys way out of our league. The knockouts piled up. We all got familiar with the sensation of waking up on the canvas. You could see it weigh on Al. His wife's illness and the guilt over the fights he was taking. He got in over his head. I had a fight in the Taj Mahal in Atlantic City. Some dude from California. The Calabasas Kid was his handle. The scouting report was that he was big and fast, a dude on the rise. The report on me? Young and dumb, but watch out for that right hook. Al was quiet as he taped my hands. I smelled gin on his breath. He wouldn't look me in the eye. Entered Johnny Del Negro, with some hulk of a flunky. "What's up, Al?" I said. He backed away, still not making eye contact. I recognized Johnny from the neighborhood. He'd been in the gym a few times. Nobody was ever happy to see him. "Frankie Longlegs," he said, a joker's smile on his face. "You look ready to kick somebody's ass." I was, but I kept quiet. "About that." He pulled a stool over next to the table I was sitting on. The muscle he came with stayed back, made the hard looks. I mirrored them right back. He chuckled, indulgent. His name was Hank the Tank. Johnny Del Negro cleared his throat. "We're gonna need you to, go down in the third round." "Who the fuck is we?" Johnny sighed. His eyes seemed to ask, "Do we really need to do this?" "We is me and your manager over there." "How? What the fuck?" Al stared at his shoes. "Don't be too hard on him, Legs. Goddamn medical bills have a way of piling up. And people call me a shark." "Medical bills?" "He didn't say anything? Poor guy's wife's got the cancer. Cut him some slack." Al's eyes were closed now, a hand on his temple like he was suffering from a migraine. "So, kid," Johnny waited for me to look at him, "you go down in the third, or else." "Or else what?" Johnny looked at Hank. If cruelty had a smell, Hank reeked of it. "Or else my man here has to pay somebody a visit." Hank grinned. "How about he pays me a visit right now?" Johnny shook his head. "Not you, Legs." We all looked at Al, who looked about as sad as a man can. "I think we're done here, Hank." Before Johnny left, he turned and held up 3 fingers, then turned his hand into a gun and pointed it at Al. We didn't speak again, Al and I. He finished wrapping my hands without making eye contact. The closest thing to a father I'd had in the last 5 years sold me out. I understood why. Still hurt. We walked to the ring like 2 men headed to the electric chair. The Calabasas Kid made a flashy entrance. He danced and strutted like a peacock, punching the air. The crowd got worked up. I bounced lightly on each foot, rolled my head to loosen my neck, felt the pops and cracks, shook my arms, watched the Kid mug for the fans. In the front row, Johnny and Hank watched. Johnny caught my eye and smiled. My heart pumped hot lava through my veins. I shook with rage. We touched gloves at the center of the ring. "Ready, punk?" he said. I was. He came in fast. I came in faster. I remember his eyes. Surprised, confused, then scared, then closed. Knocked out in the first round. Inevitable chaos. The overwhelmed crowd buzzed and someone struck the bell over and over again. The ring filled with trainers. I tore off my gloves, hopped through the ropes, and went after Hank. Johnny Del Negro watched as I tenderized Hank's face, until I wiped the grin off it, until his left eye was swollen shut. Then I turned and looked at the spooked, silent audience, fully prepared to take every one of them on. "Nice fight," Johnny said. A couple of guys dragged me back to the ring. Some medics attended to Hank. Al tried to talk some sense to me. I shoved him away. Marched back to the dressing room alone. Johnny Del Negro waited for me there. He didn't look upset. More like puzzled. I figured he was there to shoot me. I didn't care. I gave him his chance. Put some clothes on, Lakes. I started to get dressed. Well, you cost me some money tonight. Cost Al some money. You bet on the wrong guy. Looks that way. His smile was just an excuse to show his teeth. But you got me wondering. About what? Can you control that temper of yours? What do you want? Maybe I can use a guy who likes to hurt people, who's good at it. Maybe you help me out. We forget about what Al owes me. I'm listening. Because of the incident with Hank, I couldn't fight in Boston anymore. Lost my fight card. No more sanctioned bouts. I didn't have a lot of options. That's how I got mixed up with these people. The wrong people. I don't mean guys that smoked or drank or did drugs. I don't mean naughty people. Bad people. Bordering on evil. You do what you have to do. Or what you think you have to do. No difference. At first I rode shotgun on Johnny's house calls. Looked scary. Applied pain when needed. Pretty soon he let me fly solo. Saturdays. I visited the deadbeats who didn't pay up on Friday. It paid well. I was good at it. Apart from the occasional saw, I enjoyed it. What can I say? So many different reactions to pain. Everyone has a different threshold. Felt like it was my mission to discover people's limits. Find out what hurt them the most. My father, when he smacked me with his belt, or his hand, or his fist, used to say this hurt him more than it hurt me. Not from where I was sitting. Much better to dish it out than to take it. Ask my brother. The third time I visited my brother, I finally spoke. Told him I was sorry. One of my counselors told me that was important. I sat next to him, took his little hand in my paw, and I had this eerie vision. My brother, surrounded by a bunch of neighborhood punks. I knew them. I'd picked on every single one of them at one time or another. They were laying into my brother, making fun of his cheap hand-me-down clothes. A lot of them mine, passed down through all my other brothers first, teasing him about our ugly mother, our drunk father. I could feel my brother's terror and his rage. I let go of his hand. How come you never told me? I'm telling you now. A ghost's voice. The sound of my brother as a child, healthy, happy, in my head. There were 6 of them, in a circle around him. My third stop of the day is a personal errand. His name is Reggie Hansen. I've known him since we were kids. He doesn't see it coming. The uppercut into his solar plexus takes the air raid out of him. He goes limp as a sail. Then I go to work on his knee with a tire iron. Don't feel bad for him. He has it coming. He screams like a bitch. Finally, those contorted sounds turn into a word. Why? I'm dressed all in black, from my boots to the balaclava covering my face. Don't want him to recognize me. I do my best Batman voice. Because. You'll walk eventually, with a limp. Maybe a cane. Reggie is the last of the 6. The other 5, like him, are in various states of disrepair, all with permanent reminders of how breakable they are. Reggie probably had it easiest, because he didn't do very much. Didn't do anything to stop it, either. My brother's in what they call a persistent vegetative state. Everything works except his brain. There's all kinds of articles about it. I've read most of them. Some claim he can hear when you talk to him. Some say he can't. He has this thing, muscle memory. Put a deck of cards in his hands and he'll shuffle them. Spooky. I remember teaching him how to do it. Give him a fork or spoon and he'll feed himself. Keep going even after the food's gone. Does he want any more? Can he taste it? A little while ago, I brought him a bat. I was curious. Sneaked it in under my coat. Placed it in his eager hands. He adjusted his grip, choked up a bit. Then almost took my head off with a mighty swing. Almost swung himself out of the bed. I had to pry it out of his hands that kept reaching for it after I took it away. I gave him a deck of cards. It seemed to occupy him. I stopped by Johnny Del Negro's pub, tell him how things went down with the BC kid and with Saul. You better pray that insurance money comes in. I already have. It will. In the future, take it easy on the co-ed stuff, guy. I don't need to draw any more heat on my operation than I already got. He says it because he has to, but he doesn't mind a reputation for being heartless. Word will spread. He will benefit. Okay. Nice work, Lex. Get out of here. He knows where I'm going. The one thing he doesn't crack wise about. Smart of him. I can smell the sterile hospital scent even before I step inside. The people at the desk, the orderlies, all know me. We nod at each other. Today I look closer at them. My brother's been here for years, just like they have. They've changed too. Heavier, grayer hair, eyes a little sadder every time I come. I'm no different. There are not a lot of happy stories inside the rooms in this facility. Not a lot of smiles or relief. Like at church, this place is full of quiet, desperate, unanswered prayers. But we keep hoping someone will hear. Someone will answer one. I slide a chair over next to my brother's bed. Sit. I take his hand. Squeeze. He squeezes back just as hard. Harder, maybe. I think about what I did to Reggie Hansen. My last errand for my brother. I wonder again, like always, did I do what he wanted me to do? My brother's breathing seems to get deeper. His eyes open wide, like always. I have no idea what he sees. No idea if he knows what I did, what I've done for him. Just faith. Maybe that's all we ever have. I think back on that day when we were kids. I was warming up before a game, in my team uniform. I tossed a ball in the air, took huge Dwight Evans cuts at the ball, swinging for the fences, for an imaginary green monster. I'd hit my first home run the week before. I can still remember the feeling. That perfect moment. The ball, the bat, the swing. Everything aligned just right. The ball going and going. Nothing quite like it. But I wasn't connecting with the ball. Kept missing or hitting it into the ground. Too eager. The more I missed, the harder I swung. Nick made some comment. Maybe grinned when he shouldn't have. Then the smack of the bat hitting him. The blood. The expression on my father's face. The truest, purest hurt I've ever seen. After a bit, Nick lets go of my hand. I lift the bat I brought in under my coat, my funeral coat. My skin tingles. My heart beats loud and strong, echoes in my head. We've been practicing. I usually hold up a pillow after I hand him the bat. His swing has gotten better, a home run swing. No pillow this time. He adjusts his grip until his knuckles turn white. His jaw clenches. Any second now. I lower my head to the center of an imaginary strike zone. Exhale. pray for the scent of Saul's bread when I wake.